Jose, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me today. Jose, you are on deck.
Well, never imagined I'll be part of this side of the communication here. You know, I'm intrigued, to say the least.
Okay. Well, you indicated when we were chatting before that you see yourself as a creative person, more comfortable behind the scenes, right? Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, that's correct.
What is it that, why do you say that?
Well, I guess, I don't know how to place it socially. Mm-hmm. Maybe I usually say I'm behind the camera type of guy, not because I'm artistic or anything, but it does fall into a larger category. When I talk to other artistic people, mm-hmm. we seem to agree that's usually the case. I never really thought it was just because I'm artistic, right? I just mm-hmm. think I don't like to be exposed. I like to work behind the scenes. You know, I've been doing this for many years, mm-hmm. and I never get exposed. I'm behind the cameras. You know, and I enjoy that comfort. I enjoy taking my time. I don't need to show myself out, expose my persona, I mm-hmm. guess.
So let me ask you, because you're a senior motion graphics editor here at the agency, and you've been with us for some time. You know, when you say, you know, I don't want to show myself or expose myself, I can understand what that means from the perspective of, hey, here I am in front of the camera, look at me, right?
Correct.
But clearly, you're a talented artistic person with an eye and a vision and a sense of purpose for what you would like to communicate creatively. So it's almost as if you don't want to put your physical self in front, but the expressiveness that you have inside, that will ultimately make itself in front of eyes, correct?
This is crazy that you mention it. Yeah, I feel like I'm at the shrink right now. You're digging deep into my brain, and you're saying things that are true that I didn't even think about. So you have a good eye, you know. Basically, yes, as an artistic person, ever since I was young, I'll express myself artistically. Mm-hmm. I was never good with words. I was very introvert. And especially because I did come to the United States late, English was not part of me, and it made me even more, I drew back socially, just mm-hmm. because I was not comfortable communicating. Mm-hmm. Maybe my life would have been different if I never left my country, but now, when I made it here, not knowing the language, I was very quiet. And I was not back in Colombia, which is weird, right? I got here and I changed my personality. I closed. And I realized I was really good at writing. I was good at drawing. I was even good at writing songs. I was very artistic because I thought it's the best way to communicate without using my words.
So, okay, you know, there's a lot of questions that I have, not knowing that much about your background and your history. So you're from Colombia?
Yes.
Where in Colombia are you from?
I'm from Bogota.
Bogota. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's it like growing up in Bogota?
Oh, if you ask maybe 20 different people from the same city, we'll probably have different perspectives. Mm-hmm. It's just like asking anyone from New York, if you were born and raised, whether in Brooklyn or Manhattan, it doesn't matter. It's such a different, you know, it's a large city with many cultural backgrounds. Mm-hmm. But for me, my personal life was very comfortable. We had it all, you know? And so I didn't know the dangers of Colombia because I was raised in a bubble. Mm-hmm. And I always felt safe. So I was taking the bus by myself at 10 years old. I felt very comfortable traveling the city, and I had my friends. Well, I wouldn't travel far, right? But to me, it felt like I was going far.
Sure.
But I felt independent, which was different from here, especially when Florida has horrible public transportation. So you are not going to be a 13-year-old boy going 40 miles away from your home without a car. Right. Not here, but in Colombia, I felt very independent. I didn't need my parents as much.
So at a young age, describe to me a typical day in the life as a 10, 12, 13-year-old boy in Bogota, out, from the moment you wake up to the moment you walk out the door and what you experience during a day? What's it like?
My childhood was beautiful, especially because Monday through Friday I had to go to school. I'll do my homework quickly so I could get back out, and I was never back home until the sun was down. So I was a street boy, but not in an urban way, more like out there always.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll, like, let's say on a random Tuesday, call my friends right after school, and then met up at a local park to play soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll play soccer a lot. And if we were not, we were in like 5 different friends at one particular friend's home, whether playing video games or just, you name it. We probably had a little music band,
Yeah.
It was part of being a young person, right?
Sure.
Social and very active, very active.
Is mom and dad both working? Was mom home? What's the dynamic at home like?
So my grandmother used to live with us because they both worked.
Okay.
Because they did both work, there was just that one motherly figure at home, which was grandma. All she cared about was homework getting done. So I will get it done, and then I was free.
So she had a little bit of a taskmaster or disciplinarian to make sure that you were staying on course with your studies.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But as soon as you're done, boom, you're out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously generations change, and I look at my son, and he's not what I wish he was when it comes to my type of childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously here is different, but he plays more video games than I want him to.
Right.
And I'm like, just go out, get on your bike. I used to ride my bike just for fun.
Yes.
Alone, if all my friends were busy, I'll still go and just ride by myself.
Yes.
But he doesn't. He needs friends to get on the bike. He will not do it by himself. So when I contrast his likes and my likes,
Mm-hmm.
they're not a perfect match.
Right.
So, then I look at my childhood, and my father used to feel the same about me. So it just doesn't matter what you do. You're always going to be different from your previous generation.
There's that generational difference. As I listen to this, and I can only conjure images in my head, but, I can only imagine that as a young boy growing up in Bogota, you come home from school, grandma's there, you sit down, you do your work, and you say, yes, I'm all done, and then you're out. In my mind, I see, in my limited travels to Central or South America, like I just see this like vibrant like world that lives outside of the door, a very imperfect but beautiful, kind of rough and colorful world that might have existed right outside of the doorstep of your home, whatever it was. Was it like that? I mean, you get out and there's just a magical vibrance to living in Bogota?
Yeah, I agree. That's the best way to describe it. It was very colorful, very vibrant. The energy was very positive. I guess the sense of community was stronger there. So when I did move here, that was one of the cultural shocks, that people kept more to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to knock on a little neighbor's door and go out and play. And I didn't have that when I got here. So that's when I started shutting down, and people will talk to me. I didn't know the language. So then I'll shut down even more.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I became more artistic, was then. I didn't draw back in Colombia, but I got into sculpting, into drawing, painting with all materials. I got a lot of time to dig within myself during that period of time where I didn't have that many friends at first.
What led your family to come here, assuming that your family came here together, but
Yes.
what brought you to the United States from Colombia?
Well, they were not planning on doing so. And some countries participate in a visa lottery sometimes.
Okay.
And Colombia only participated once. And that year we applied and we won it. So we were not planning on moving, but just winning opened their minds to trying it out. When my parents were thinking about opportunities for their kids to them it was a no-brainer. I didn't have a saying whether I wanted to come or not. This is their decision, and it happened, right? So whatever happened later in life, like anything in life, I guess, you do certain things and you don't realize you didn't plan every detail. And then they were having second thoughts whether they wanted to move back because they saw their children not happy here at first. So they really thought they made a mistake coming here.
I'm curious. So, you know, your family, you're growing up in Colombia, and there's this thing called the lottery, right? Yeah. Essentially, it's like, hey, you put your name into the system, and if you're lucky enough, you could have the opportunity to leave and go to the United States.
Correct.
And I presume that the desire for your parents would have been, well, if we go to the United States, there's going to be more opportunity for us and even potentially more opportunity for our children. So we're willing to put our name in the hat here for this opportunity to hopefully improve the quality of the lives of our children, right? Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah. I mean, they were talked into the lottery by a family member who was already living here. So when he mentioned the lottery, my parents really didn't even take it seriously. We were very comfortable there economically, so it wasn't like a desperate move.
Right.
But we had family here, so they're like, oh, that's sure. They never thought the possibility of winning. They just kind of did it to satisfy my uncle who was living here. So once we won, they're like, oh, wow, well, that was unexpected.
Right.
So they started, it took them a whole year to actually decide to come here. We didn't win and move right away. They had to really think about it.
Do you find, I'm sitting here as somebody who has grown up in the United States and been fortunate enough through a number of scenarios to have been able to live a very wonderful and beautiful life. And in this country, and I do love this country, is there something, I almost sit here and think it's so easy for those of us that have grown up here and lived here to take this experience for granted, in the sense that there are families around the world, your family, an example, and I realized, you know, they said, oh, well, somebody recommended this, so we just figured we'd try, and they didn't give it that much thought, but that there literally is, in certain countries, a lottery. It's almost like, hey, you might get lucky enough to win this ticket to go there.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, I was never a grown-up in Colombia. I was a child. So I never had to struggle what it was to work and pay bills. So I knew how to navigate the city, but it's not the same as raising a family.
Right.
So I never got to experience that over there. And I know, like any country, goes up through ups and downs, better moments than others. So I know for a fact that Colombia has gone through really rough moments, for sure. But I didn't get to experience them as the same as my parents did. So whatever decisions they made was based on their experiences. I'm sure they had to go through different things that I didn't get to see. But yes, I mean, this country, for sure, and after being here for long enough, there's no way I could live back in Colombia anymore. I love this country with all my life. But my childhood was beautiful when we talked about what it was. So there's something that will never be taken away from my experiences. If I do go back ever, I wouldn't be able to adapt anymore.
Really?
Yes, 100%.
Why is that? What would be the most challenging?
Well, now I'm a grown-up.
Yes.
So I did go to Colombia multiple times already married, already with a child. And I realized, wow, this country's a mess. But I only got to see it once I was grown.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's all sorts of negative thoughts that come to my head when I consider that idea. That I wouldn't want to pitch because, I mean, ultimately wouldn't want to talk bad about Colombia, but it is not a place for me anymore. The people are nice, the food is amazing, and the gorgeous landscapes are something that attract me. But then that's it. You know, if I want to just update my license, takes like 3 days because you have to make a line and they send you to another place, and it's like a whole adventure just to get a simple thing done. You know?
It's very positive of you to say the word adventure, right?
Yeah,
Not
no.
everybody would refer to it with those kind terms.
Yeah, I mean, so simple things that we do online with couple clicks, they are just not interested in updating their
Right.
systems. So everything is a hustle over there.
Mhm.
And I'm comfortable here. I've learned how to adapt and build my character upon the American ways.
Okay.
I'll go back to Colombia and there's no such thing, and I don't belong 100% in either place anyways. I came here at that point where I'm in between,
Mhm.
and I appreciate both beautiful things of both countries. But at this point, my life is here 100%.
Hmm. So you come here at age 13?
Just about, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's a good, 20 plus years ago, correct? Would that be
Correct.
fair to say?
Yes.
You come to the United States, you leave a place that you're very comfortable communicating. You've got your friends, you've got these experiences, you got the freedom to get out and about, and then you come here and the language is it sounds like the initial inhibitor of your ability to continue to be who you were. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, 100%, yes.
And so then the inability to communicate yourself verbally leads to your ability to communicate yourself creatively.
Yes, that's 100% true. So, and I really never really thought about it like that, because I don't stop and analyze those details. I just go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really happy with my exploration for the arts. That alone was a hobby. I didn't think about it like, oh, I'm gonna make friends with this. I never thought of any of that. Obviously, later on, as I was getting older, in high school, people did appreciate art, and I didn't notice until they're like, oh, draw this for me or do that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself, especially back then, I'll decorate backpacks and hats and shirts for people. And obviously, I was making money like that through high
Right.
school. So
Yeah.
it was fun, yeah.
So you moved to Florida, correct?
Yes, correct.
Where in Florida do you move to? Where do you guys settle down as a family?
I was living in Weston through that time.
Okay, all right. As you're starting to develop your creative abilities, what was the first? I know you said this, but I'm not recalling. Was it writing? Was it drawing? Was it music? Like, what was or was it all of it together?
No, it was I guess all my life that took that path. So I started drawing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my passion for comics and stuff, I was like drawing my little own adventures in paper. And I realized I was not bad. Obviously, I did improve.
Mm-hmm.
But the feedback I was getting from people was so positive that it kept me exploring art.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, I don't think they wanted that as a career for me, but they're like, well, you like it, we're gonna, support it. So they were buying all these materials and exploring with different medias. So yes, it was first drawing.
Mm-hmm.
I got into sculpting and whatnot. And eventually I didn't notice I was a good writer until my teachers at school were telling me you should do AP classes for this and poetry and whatnot. And I did, especially in college, they were really impressed with writings. So I didn't know that until college.
Okay. An enormous amount of questions just burst into my head, so I'm trying to organize my thoughts. As you start developing these creative skills, what is it? Is it just for you? Was it just the enjoyment of being able to develop a skill that was then being encouraged, or do you feel that there was something inside of you that you were trying to communicate through this process?
Well, it's such a deep book to dig into,
Mm-hmm.
because I haven't even tried myself to diagnose my life. But when I was drawing, I guess I was more of exploring my how will you call it, passions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So back then it was more of a fantasy world. I was not drawing my life.
Right.
I was more drawing my my fantasies, right, from back then, like especially a comic writer that I was trying to go through, everything was extremely fantasy. Nothing was close to reality. And
like superhero fantasy, or
everything.
like alternate worlds fantasy?
Yes, I think. Yeah, I guess superheroes, but with a twist, because I was never inspired by any heroes you ever read of.
Okay.
So yes, supernatural, more like X-Files.
Okay.
And combined with superheroes. So
Interesting.
yeah, stuff like that. And I was into it. I was drawing it because I didn't know English yet to write it.
Okay.
So I was doing my comics with very basic words. So that's why comics were easy for me, because I didn't have to write books yet. I didn't have the vocabulary for it. So just drawing was good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Then as I was learning English, and maybe it was easier for me to write English because I didn't have to pronounce it. So I knew the words. I try to avoid them when it's time to say it. I have bigger words in my head and I know them, but I avoid them because I cannot even pronounce them.
Right.
So when it's time to write, I come across as someone who has a huge vocabulary. When it's time to talk, I avoid those bigger words.
Mm-hmm.
Like my tongue cannot control those, complex words.
Okay.
But yeah, when it was time to write and people were reading these books, they're like, wow, this guy has such a nice way to express it. And then when it's time to talk, I'll just make it more basic, just for me to be, more comfortable with my pronunciation.
Interesting. So again, always the mind is functioning clearly and very, very clear in terms of what it is that you want to communicate. It's just, this avenue, it's easier for you to communicate it, and this avenue, it was more challenging. And so you maybe pulled away from here and went down this road a little bit.
Yeah, so writing was easier for me to communicate than talking. So I was more quiet, but more of a writer.
Do you still write?
I mean, it's been a while, and obviously my type of writing was more of a novel type of writing. I wasn't into writing for commercials or anything like that.
Sure.
So I still like it,
Like longer form stories.
Yes.
And right. Okay. Let me ask you, just pull the microphone just a little bit closer there. Okay. So you mentioned something that is, I think, common for a lot of people who develop a creative or artistic sensibility about them at a certain point in time. And that is the either uncertainty of or certainty of that your parents don't necessarily support, or it's not what they would want for you as a child, right?
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about raising kids and they tell you they want to go through artistic path of a career, as a parent, it's something to fear, because it's not a world that's easy to get a job that's going to pay the bills. It's not easy the competition is really aggressive out there. For you to succeed, you have to do something different from the crowd, from the rest of the competition. Well, if you study law or medicine, you're going to get there are chances of getting hired or higher. You don't need to be skilled. You're a doctor, you're a doctor, that's it,
Right.
I mean, eventually you want to be a good doctor, obviously. But if you graduated with such degree, the chances of a job are higher. So I understand my parents for fearing, what do I do with this degree? So I do understand them, and definitely. That's why for me to reach my level of skill, I had to not sleep for many years, just developing my skills. That's for sure. I need to show them that I was able to make it into a career.
It's interesting. I think that's common for a lot of parents. And you'd mentioned before how, your father grew up as a child a certain way, and your way of being a child was probably not his cup of tea. And just as your child is growing up in a different way than your childhood. And so we have these generational differences, right? And certainly I think if we look back generationally, I'm not going to say that our life is easy, but certainly the life that we live today on average as humans is certainly more comfortable and easy than it was 100 years ago or 200 years ago, right? So you have that sort of generational thing that gets passed down, right? The previous generation typically always has it harder than the next generation, and they understand the dynamic and the sense of responsibility of what it takes to really make it in the world. It's hard to make it in the world. It's not an easy thing to find your way, to get out there, to earn a living, to support your family, to do all that stuff. It just doesn't fall on your lap. It takes a lot of effort. And I think a lot of parents, and I would have to ask myself how I would feel with my children, is that you look at your kid, they look at their children growing up and wanting to head into the field of the arts, and automatically it conjures a number of images of the starving artist and how hard it's going to be to make a living, and perhaps the likelihood to be around and influenced by whether it's drugs or alcohol or all the other things that perhaps can filter their way into what a parent thinks of the artistic lifestyle, right? And some of that is true. And so I imagine as a parent, it's very challenging because you want the best for your kids, right? But at the same time, like your life is your life. You came to this planet, if you believed, for your own sense of purpose and your own sense of development. And for you, it's expressing yourself creatively and finding a way to support yourself and your family doing that. And it's not easy.
Yeah, definitely. Life, like you said, is not easy for anyone. I mean, not most people struggle through the path of finding who they want to be in life. So I didn't think I was going to be an artist, honestly. I loved it. I thought of art as a hobby, right? I never thought I was going to make money out of it. And even through high school, when I was good at it, when it was time to pick a college, I never thought I was going to go into the arts. I had no idea. So I graduated, and I took a whole year for, finding myself before choosing my career path.
What did you do during that year?
Well, yes, I had to work, obviously, to pay the bills.
Sure.
I guess normal lessons, But during that year, I had to research what I wanted to do. And, I guess during the research, you don't know the options that people have as an artist. Like, you choose a career and you think, well, I cannot be just a painter, like drawing canvases. That's not a career. I mean, at least not unless you're lucky, right? Like music, you can study it, but the chances of you becoming the next rock star is just very slim. So I'm not going to be a next Picasso. I needed to do something more technical. So definitely that's when I chose I was between graphic design and animation. So I thought I'll go through animation with my graphic design passion and just design and animate at the same time, which is perfect for me. So the design aspect I love, and putting into motion I love even more. So it's just perfect for me. It's just communicating at a different level.
Was there anybody during that period of time in your life that came into your life as either a mentor or somebody helped guided you in the right direction, or did you have to come to these decisions and conclusions all by yourself?
Yeah, well, I had to get my heart broken multiple times before realizing that I had to shape myself with every smash, right, that I was getting.
Okay.
So there was this one guy who was doing his canvases and sculpting. He was actually I wouldn't know how to call it. He was recognized in Miami. There was sculptures of him through parks. He had whole walls with his paintings, and my mother knew him. So she's like, let me show you what my son is capable of. See if you can take him with you. And I was excited to meet this guy. He was someone somewhat large in the community. And he was not a graphic artist. He was not an animator. He was just a real artist with the palette of painting, and he was a real artist. And I thought, well, maybe this is exactly what I need. and he told me that I was useless for that type of world, that I was more of a graphic type of artist. I was not his type of artist. And I was crushed. I was like, oh gosh, I guess I'm not good enough, you know?
Did he really use that word, useless?
Yeah, he pretty much did, obviously in Spanish, but he said, yeah, no, this is not your world. Your art is not going to sell, you know? Your art is for magazines or a website, not for a wall or a canvas. And I was doing a lot of that back then.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was gonna be my path. And when I was crushed, I mean, I was very young still.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am, right? I started questioning my skill. So I devoted myself for a while to just polish and improve my art. But I was still focusing on that. I never thought of myself as a graphic artist, or anything digital. I wanted paint and, you know, and I had to get crushed a few more times, even though I was exposing my art in galleries and whatnot back then.
Really?
Yeah. The Consulate of Colombia had some of my paintings back then and whatnot. And I thought that was my path. I was putting so much effort and energy into it. I didn't take time to analyze other options.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. I met a friend of mine through my parents. They had a family that were friends with my parents, right? And their kid was my age. So we were forced to be friends, kind of. I was not someone I chose to be friends with. So here, you know, meet this guy, and he was studying game art. He was designing 3D models for the game world.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was the coolest thing ever, because he was so artistic, and I saw more of a technical path for a career.
Mm-hmm.
So 3D animation goes hand in hand with that, because we use the same software as video game industry. We use the same software, and I thought, well, if I'll make it in one career, I can make it on the other with the knowledge of the software. So for a while I was going to college for animation, I actually got enough gigs to model 3D assets for video games.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like exploring both careers through college, and you know, I got to do a little bit of both during the process.
You know, it's interesting to me that I'm curious to get your perspective on this. You said, you know, you had to have your heart broken or had to be crushed a few times, right? And art is, and I never get this right word, objective or subjective. I think the word is subjective, right? Like it's up to determined by anybody's opinion, right? And so here you are, you're working, you're putting your heart and soul into your work, and to have somebody say, you know, kid, you don't have what it takes for this, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's got to be a very painful experience, because that's what you were hoping to receive acknowledgement or acceptance of, right? Like you've done this work, and you're hoping somebody's going to say, Jose, you know what? It's great. You have a real talent here, and for them to bring you along. And the opposite happened, right? It was like, no, you're no good at this, yeah. Right? But that doesn't mean that you're not a good artist, right? It just meant that your particular style was meant to go down this path. So were you able to look back at some point in time at those heartaches and say, maybe that person did me a favor with that type of honesty to help guide me? Or do you feel like that prevented you from being able to do what you really wanted to do?
I guess not everyone is built the same way in their character to take critique the same way.
Okay.
Two different people can take the same exact words and interpret those in different ways. And it also depends on where you're standing in life at the moment, right? When I was that young, I didn't have to pay bills or anything of those, you know, adult responsibilities. So I wasn't hungry to be the best. I was just heartbroken because I thought that was what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
If that same critique would have happened now, I would have probably taken it differently. And that happened again later in life. So here's when you mentioned this, I went back in time for a minute. I'm not going to mention this particular person or company, but I met a couple people in my life that were doing automotive animations, and they were amazing at it. And I was using them as inspiration to when they become and do the same as for a living. I was not doing this yet. And I started just practicing at home. I'll buy the software, my computer, etc. I was doing it just to build a portfolio without the experience, because obviously people won't hire without the experience. So I was faking a portfolio, just building commercials at home, and if you show it, it's real.
Right.
So I wasn't lying, I was just showing my portfolio. And my skills were getting somewhere. They were not close to what I do now, but they had potential. And I got hired for this one company doing automotive commercials. And I was extremely excited. That was my first company. I didn't last 20 days. The guy told me I was not cut out for this. And I went back in time to when the painter told me exactly those words. And I was like, well, now I was actually already married with a kid. And so my hunger for success was higher. I couldn't fail anymore, because now I had a little man depending on me. When I was 13 and I got rejected, I just cried. When I was 20-something and I got crushed, I didn't cry. I'm like, I'll go home and polish my portfolio even more. So I was extra hungry to be the best when I lasted 20 days in this company. So later down the road, I got hired for another company. And it was funny because they had to collaborate with the company I lasted for 20 days for one commercial. And I had to see them in real life again. And we recognized each other. And they're like, oh, you're still in the industry. I thought, you were not going to make it. I'm like, well, if you see my portfolio now, you will know that I'm actually pretty good. But I never showed them my portfolio. I actually just kept on moving.
What's it like, okay, so you set up two interesting examples. You're 13, you go home, it just breaks your heart, you cry. You feel dejected and defeated. As a young man with a family, now all of a sudden there's this different experience. What's it like to go home? Do you tell your wife that? Do you keep that to yourself? Like, what's it like to go home and have that type of a rejection, but yet somehow find the strength to say, okay, I'm going to use this to better myself?
Yeah, definitely. It was extremely scary, heart attack style of moment when he told me, I have to let you go. I thought I was going to be homeless. I had to pay the bills and I didn't have a job. So definitely I had so many mixed feelings where I started questioning myself if he was right, obviously. For a second, I guess you go through all these phases of grief. So I was in denial and I was going through all these mixed feelings. But I didn't have time to go through weeks of this because ultimately I had to pay the bills. So I went back to my other job. We were doing just infomercials and it was somewhat animations too. So I kind of enjoyed it somehow. But I knew it wasn't for me. I needed bigger. So I went back to them. They rehired me just to pay the bills. And man, I'm telling you, I went nights without sleeping, just eating tutorials and books, YouTube videos on tutorials. I spent months just polishing my skills. And I was going to college too at the time. I got married when I was 21. So I was the college boy who was also
young,
yeah. I wasn't married with a career. I was married with a college life. So it was extra tough because nobody will hire me. I didn't have the experience and I was still in college. But I was married, so I needed to get hired. So yeah, I feel like I was very hungry back then for knowledge. And that kind of stuck to me because even though now I sleep, which is nice, you catch me watching tutorials just for fun. That's part of me. It
learning,
became part of me. Yeah,
learning and growing. Would it surprise you to tell you that if I told you that I still have those similar feelings, in the sense that I am not necessarily. I don't view myself as an artist, number one. I view myself as a creative person who found an environment in business to be able to put some of those skills to use. That was always my desire, but I don't view myself as a creative person. However, I am very acutely aware of the fact that what we do as a company for our clients is provide them with some level of creative solution for their business that hopefully helps their business. So while I'm not painting a picture or I'm not specifically making the commercial, I'm the person that represents that work that gets done for our clients. And I mean, I've been doing this, this company is in existence almost 15 years now. I can't tell you how many times I've been fired, and every single time it hurts. There is that component that it's a rejection. Like, you not good enough. You didn't do good enough. Now, I would say that, through the course of 15 years, you start to get hardened to that a little bit, and you just realize that people have to make decisions about their business, that they feel is best for their business. It might not necessarily always be a rejection of you, but that it is still a painful experience to go through. And I still to this day can relate to that feeling of like, oh, shit. Yeah. It hurts.
Yeah,
it hurts. It hurts to lose, or it hurts to have somebody say the work that you're doing is not good enough.
Yeah, definitely. 100% what you said. You take it personal, and as you're mature enough to know that's business decisions, it's not so personal. At the moment, I was not ready to work for this industry, to be honest. I look back and I was not ready. And if I was to apply to a company today, I'm overqualified for them now, because honestly, what we do here is superior to what they do there. So is that hill where you're climbing to the top. And once the higher you get and you look back down, you realized it was just a stepping stone in your learning path. That company would have been amazing in my experience because I needed to learn more. But they were not where I wanted to be at the end, So, yeah.
When you look down the road for you, right, you're still a young man, like when you look down this road, what are some things along the road for you that you say, these are meaningful destinations, accomplishments, or goals that you would like to achieve for you?
Well, that question, just like anything, the answer will change depending on where I'm standing in life.
Yes.
And if you asked me that 5 years ago or 5 years from now, the answer will always be different. And the reason I bring the timeline is because I've asked this question so many times to myself, and I realized I always answer it differently. I did try to make my own business, and I was so hungry to go through this, but the energy was taken away from me, reaching new clients, and I didn't have a team. It was so much effort, and I was not sleeping, and it was not paying the amount of effort. And I was independent for a while. I was just a freelancer, if you call it. I was getting paid per project. And the pay was amazing per project, but the project was over, and then I needed to find the next one. And it's suffocating looking for the time of not making money. So feeling like I'm part of a company that's taking advantage of what I love, but I'm getting the stable paycheck brings me a tranquility that I like. So growing in a company like this will be my next option, because making my company honestly was a nightmare for me. I cannot imagine going through that again. I can see myself growing within a company. I see that more of a place where I get both the growth and the safety that I appreciate. I feel like I'm bringing that balance to my life that I've been searching always.
That's great. Is there any specifically in the actual work in and of itself, are there directions that you would like to take? What would you like if you were to say, if I could create this type of work, right? What would it be?
I mean, just to understand this question, are you asking if I could create anything for any particular industry, or what was the question?
Not even industry specific, but okay. So you've said, you started off learning how to draw and to write, and that you got, you became quite proficient at poetry, and then you moved into motion graphics for gaming, and here you are. So you've got this complement of skills, right? If you were to say, okay, for you, how do you pull that all together and create your masterpiece, if you will? What is your masterpiece?
I would love it if you could just sit 1 hour next to me and see what I do. I'm actually working on something particular on my free time on the side for one of our clients here. So when the time comes, I can use this creation on one of their commercials. I don't have a script. I don't have any direction. I'm doing it on my own. But it combines everything I ever loved. And one thing that when I was sculpting in real life with clay, that 3D was better than flat paintings. It was the same amount of creativity, but in 3D. So when I started studying what I do, I got involved in 3D, 100% digital. And it was just like sculpting. And that's what I'm doing now for one of these clients. So 3D to me became a new level of passion. I do it, I dream about it. Like I wake up with new ideas and I draw them quickly so I don't forget next day. It's a crazy passion that I have for 3D. So I build my 3D models, I make complete scenes, I light them, texture them, I do this whole world that later on I can put cameras in and make a whole commercial in a digital world. And that's the perfect combination of art that is so difficult to explain. I can go abstract if I want, I can be realistic if I want, but it's everything I ever loved. And creating in 3D digitally is not messy like clay.
Right.
And it's also commercially sellable. Like it can go on TV and people see it as a commercial and I'm making money because it has that value, right? Instead of doing a sculpture and hoping to sell it. This one, I can see it on TV. I'm making a commercial. So I see the value money-wise for what I'm making. Or rather than create, look at this head on a clay. Nobody cares about that, It satisfies your inner artist, but it doesn't bring a solution to anyone.
Well, a couple things. Number one, when we're done with this podcast, the first thing I'm going to do is write down on my pad to schedule an hour with you to do that. So you have my word that is going to happen, because I think that that's something that would be beneficial for both of us. So that's a done deal.
Awesome.
We'll schedule that. And two, it's just great to hear through these conversations all of the unique and interesting creative passions that you and everybody else that I've spoken to have. That was my primary goal with this, aside from just sitting across from interesting people that I care about, to have a conversation and just see where it goes, because I find this very enjoyable. But also in the support of our business, my desire is, at this stage of my career and the development of this company, is to bring the creativity to the forefront. And we'll get together on Friday and we'll talk more about that and why. But that's my desire at this point in time. I feel that is our calling, and that is the thing that we can truly bring to our clients and to our industry at this point in time that would differentiate us from other shops in our space. And so to be able to learn more about your thought process and everybody here's thought process about what we can create and accomplish is it's very rewarding. I'm finding myself going, my God, what a disaster or a shame it would have been to not have these conversations. If I didn't know what I now know about you, it would be a real failing on my part for the purpose of the quality of my life, your life, and this company. So it's really good to hear these things.
Definitely. I think it's the smartest thing I've ever seen anyone do, what you're doing right here. It's extremely smart. Definitely, I see the importance of it. So definitely, I appreciate the time you've given me.
You've got it. I'm left with one question.
Yes.
one question, and that is, outside of creativity and work and what you do, what brings the most joy into your life?
My family, definitely. 100% my family. I have a lovely wife, an amazing boy. He's extremely smart and sweet. And they bring that missing piece that I didn't know I needed, because before you're married, you don't have that piece and you don't know you're missing it.
Mm-hmm.
But once I have it, I realized they brought an extra importance to my life that weighs more than I thought it would weight. So they became a priority for me. And they're definitely above my career. They have become that piece.
Do you find that the role your family plays in your life is far more stabilizing than you could have ever imagined?
Yes, definitely. It's a dynamic themselves. Just family alone is so deep. So it brings its headaches, it brings its joys. Just like anything large, right? Having a boy is not like having a computer. I like my computer, I built it myself. But doesn't bring me headaches like my son can, or joys, right? So when my son is doing certain things that worries me, my computer will never do such things. So an item that brings value to your life doesn't have this depth. And a family has that depth. So it's surprising. It's like every day is a surprise for me. Like one day, my son just comes home and tells me, "Dad, I know that I love soccer now." I'm like, well, look at that. That's a surprise. Now we enroll to a soccer team, and it's just surprises after surprises, and you never know what's next. And that alone is just priceless.
That's a beautiful thing. Well, that feels like an appropriate place for us to wrap up, in the sense that it is my desire for us to utilize these conversations and this experience and what we're doing here at the agency to be something that can be fulfilling for us personally in terms of what we want to do with the work of our lives, while at the same time providing that financial stability and opportunity for all of our families, but in this case, your family, to be able to have a safe, happy, and meaningful place to continue to share your life together. So Jose, I thank you for what you contribute to the agency. I'm glad that we've had this conversation and I've gotten to learn more about you and what drives you, and that will certainly benefit us all. So cheers to you and to your beautiful family. Thank you.
Chris. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.